The sidewalk outside the courthouse glistened under the noonday sun, concrete slabs humming with heat. A woman sat quietly beneath the shade of a magnolia tree, her posture poised, back straight, a leather-bound planner open on her lap. Her pen moved steadily, each stroke measured. Her presence was calm, self-contained, and composed for the officers watching from across the street. Their cruiser idled with a low mechanical growl. Inside, Officers Vance and O'Malley surveyed her like hawks circling a rabbit that didn't know it was being watched. Vance was older, a bulkier man with a trimmed buzz cut and cold, unreadable eyes. O'Malley was wearier, fidgety, and younger, his right thumb tapping anxiously against his thigh. They stepped out without a word to each other, shoes hitting the pavement in unison. Vance adjusted his belt as they crossed the street. Keisha Evans looked up only briefly, clocking their approach, then returned to her planner. She wasn't worried. She had clerked for a federal judge, passed the bar in 2 states, and currently served as legal counsel for the city's Judicial Ethics Board. But years of legal armor didn't quiet the knot forming in her gut. "Ma'am," Vance began, voice clipped and robotic, "we've had a report about a suspicious person loitering in this area. You matched the description." Keisha blinked. "Loitering? I'm sitting, reading on a public sidewalk. Is that a crime today?" O'Malley stepped in, his hand already hovering near his holster. There was also mention of a possible weapon. "You carrying anything, ma'am?" Keisha raised an eyebrow. "Other than a pen and a copy of the city charter?" "No." Vance's face didn't twitch. "We need to see your ID." No hello. No clarification. Just demands. Keisha exhaled slowly, then reached into her briefcase with deliberate slowness. "Fine. Let's not pretend I haven't seen this movie before." She handed over her license, her law credentials still clipped to the inside of the case. O'Malley didn't glance at them. Vance squinted at her ID like it might change if he stared hard enough. "Keisha Evans," he read aloud. "That's right. Attorney. You might have seen me around here, inside that courthouse, usually behind the bench as legal advisor to Judge Thompson." Neither officer reacted, or maybe they didn't know or didn't care. "We're going to need to search your bag," O'Malley said. "No, you're not," she said, her voice steady as concrete. "You have no probable cause, no warrant, and I've committed no crime. You've got nothing but a description based on race and gender." O'Malley's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, don't make this difficult." "This is difficult," she snapped, standing now. "I know my rights. You are detaining me without cause, and you are escalating a situation that was never a threat. Put your hands where we can see them." O'Malley shouted suddenly. Keisha froze, palms up. Around them, pedestrians slowed. Phones rose like antennae, catching injustice on film. Someone murmured, "She's a lawyer, I've seen her in court." "She's resisting." Vance barked. "I'm not resisting," Keisha said loud and clear. "I'm asserting my rights." But O'Malley lunged, seizing her wrist in a sharp twist. "You're under arrest for obstruction." "What obstruction of what?" "Your ego?" she cried, shocked as he yanked her other hand behind her back. The first cuff clamped down tight. "Stop resisting," he yelled again. "I'm not," she shouted back, the second cuff biting into her skin. "You're assaulting me." Vance shoved her forward, guiding her toward the squad car as gasps echoed around the plaza. A man filming cursed loudly, "She didn't do a damn thing." Keisha caught the camera lens of a teenage girl, locked on her, recording everything with wide, unwavering eyes. She gave her a sharp nod, "Document everything." The cruiser door swung open and Keisha was shoved inside. The leather seats were hot, the silence louder than sirens. She stared out at the courthouse steps, the place where she had debated, advised judges, advocated for due process, and now she was being carted away from it in cuffs like a criminal. Her phone vibrated somewhere deep in her bag, abandoned on the sidewalk. Her planner was likely still open, her pen rolled off the bench. None of it mattered now. Inside the cruiser, Vance adjusted the rearview mirror to look at her. "You people think you're so untouchable," he muttered under his breath. Keisha said nothing, but her mind was racing. This isn't the end. The precinct was cool, sterile, and silent except for the buzz of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic thump of Keisha's heartbeat in her ears. Her hands were still cuffed behind her back when they walked her past the front desk. The clerk glanced up, then did a double take. Vance? Is that, she's in custody?" Vance snapped. "For what?" Vance ignored the question and kept walking, but the clerk stared after them, recognizing Keisha's face. Everyone who worked in law enforcement around here knew Keisha Evans. She wasn't just a lawyer, She was the system's conscience, the kind of person you didn't put in cuffs unless you had airtight cause. In the holding area, they made her sit in a narrow plastic chair while they took her fingerprints. O'Malley hovered near the door, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "You comfortable?" he asked sarcastically. Keisha didn't even look at him. "I'm illegally detained. Nothing about this is comfortable." "Ma'am, you raised your voice and resisted." "I raised my voice. Not a weapon. Not my hands. Just my voice. You treat that like a threat, and that says everything." "You people always have something to say," he muttered. Keisha slowly turned to him. "You people?" Her voice dropped, cold, measured. "Say that again." He didn't, but the tension in the room grew heavy. Vance returned with a clipboard. "You're being booked for obstruction of justice and resisting arrest. We'll see about bond later today." "No, you'll see something else," Keisha said. "Because this won't end in a courtroom. It's going to start in one. And when it does, I'll be the one in the robe." Vance rolled his eyes. "Yeah, sure you will." He shoved the clipboard at her, forcing her to sign with a pen between her bound hands. Meanwhile, down the hall, something had shifted. The front desk clerk, Officer Rodriguez, had seen Keisha argue cases in court. He'd even heard Judge Thompson call her the sharpest legal mind the city's seen in decades. Rodriguez picked up his phone, hesitating for only a second before dialing. "Hey sir, we've got a situation. You're going to want to hear this." 2 hours later, Keisha sat on a cold metal bench in the holding cell, her wrists red and sore. She kept her back straight, her head high. If they wanted her to break, they were going to be disappointed. She could hear O'Malley and Vance outside the door, laughing about lunch, something about tacos, something about how she thought she was somebody. The lock turned with a clank. In walked Captain David Price, tall, broad-shouldered, and grim. He didn't speak at first, just stared at Keisha with disbelief. She stood slowly. "Captain." He exhaled sharply. "Miss Evans." "Keisha. I am so sorry." She nodded once. "You should be." "Why wasn't I notified immediately?" He snapped at the officer behind him. The officer looked sheepish. "Vance said it was a standard loitering call." "Loitering?" Price's voice boomed. "That's a city attorney and a court officer." O'Malley's voice cut in from down the hallway. She was being difficult. "You cuffed a civil rights attorney without probable cause? Do you know what kind of lawsuit this opens up?" Keisha didn't flinch. "This isn't about a lawsuit, Captain. It's about a system that still sees educated black women as threats." Price looked stricken. "You're absolutely right. And I promise this will not be ignored." He gestured to the officer. "Get those cuffs off her now." The officer hurried forward, fumbling with the keys. The cuffs popped off and Keisha rubbed her wrists. "Captain," she said, "I want every second of the body cam footage preserved. No edits, no gaps." "It's already been pulled," Price said, "and the mayor's office is aware." That surprised her, but only for a second. "Good. Because tomorrow I walk into that courthouse, and when I do," her voice slowed to ice, "they won't be laughing." The next morning, Vance adjusted his tie in the mirror. "You ready for this hearing?" he asked O'Malley. "Yeah," O'Malley muttered, "just another obstruction case." Probably pleaded down. The two officers entered the courthouse, heads high, confident, smirking, until they heard the whispers. "She's here." "That's her, the one they arrested." A security guard at the door glared at them. "You got a lot of nerve showing up after what you pulled." O'Malley tried to ignore it. Vance pushed ahead. "Courtroom 3, right?" They opened the doors and froze. At the bench, robed and radiant, sat Keisha Evans. Behind her, the city seal. To her left, a court reporter. To her right, a bailiff who nodded respectfully as she adjusted the microphone. The courtroom fell into a hush as she looked up. "Good morning," she said coolly. "I see we have some familiar faces in attendance." O'Malley's knees wobbled. Vance paled. They had arrested the judge. O'Malley and Vance stood frozen at the back of courtroom 3. The smug grins they wore the day before had vanished, replaced by blank stares, twitching jaws, and panic pooling beneath their crisp collars. In front of them sat Judge Keisha Evans, no longer cuffed, no longer silenced. Her judicial robe draped elegantly over her shoulders, her posture radiating unshakable authority. Her gavel rested within reach, and behind her eyes, fire. The gallery whispered. Phones recorded. Every pair of eyes in the room flicked between the two nervous officers and the woman they had so recently tried to humiliate. "Officers O'Malley and Vance," Judge Keisha began, her voice calm but loaded with iron. "You were scheduled to testify today in a minor traffic case, but it seems a more pressing matter has emerged." They didn't respond, couldn't. In light of recent events, she continued, this court is compelled to address the actions of law enforcement, specifically the 2 officers who unlawfully detained, mocked, and attempted to intimidate a black woman exercising her lawful right to speak on behalf of another citizen. Vance finally opened his mouth. Your Honor, sit down. The room gasped, even the court reporter stopped typing for a moment. Keisha's eyes didn't blink. You will not speak until I give you leave. You have already spoken enough in the dark. Now we bring it to light. She nodded to the bailiff. A monitor flickered on. Body cam footage played, unedited, uncut. It showed every word, every sneer, O'Malley's mocking tone, Vance's arrogant silence, and Keisha standing tall, intelligent, firm, completely non-threatening, yet still being handcuffed and dragged into a patrol car for simply questioning their behavior. When the footage ended, the courtroom was silent. Dead silent. Judge Keisha leaned forward, folding her hands. This is the America too many of us still live in. Her voice dropped into a somber, almost tender tone. You see a confident black woman raising her voice, and instead of listening, you reach for cuffs. You think the badge shields you from consequences. But what you forget, what you never knew, is that this woman was already a guardian of justice before you ever slipped on that uniform. Her tone sharpened. The law is not a weapon for the insecure. It's a shield for the vulnerable. But yesterday you reversed that. You tried to weaponize your authority against someone you couldn't control. O'Malley looked down. Vance gripped the edge of the bench. Judge Keisha stood up from the bench, slowly, powerfully. I recuse myself from presiding over any of your cases in the future. But let me be clear. Your careers are now under formal investigation. The Internal Affairs Division has been given everything. The footage, the reports, even the parking lot incident you failed to log. She stepped out from behind the bench and faced them head-on. And while I will not render legal judgment here, I will say this as a citizen and a woman who has had enough of the silence. You didn't just arrest me, you arrested every little black girl who dreamed of becoming a judge and wondered if the badge would see her as a threat. Then she turned to the gallery, to the community. This courtroom is not just where justice happens. It's where truth fights to breathe. And today it just took a deep breath. A spontaneous ripple of applause filled the room, quieted first, then swelling. Vance slinked out of the courtroom. O'Malley followed, his shoulders hunched. Later that week, the city's police commissioner held a press conference. We do not condone what happened, he announced, standing beside community leaders and civil rights advocates. Judge Evans's strength in the face of this violation is a lesson we will not ignore. Vance was suspended without pay. O'Malley, already on probation for prior complaints, was fired. The footage went viral. Networks ran stories titled, Judge Arrested by Racist Cops, then Makes Them Face Her in Court. She walked in cuffed, she walked out wearing the robe. But for Keisha, it was never about going viral. It was about making it stop. 1 month later, Keisha sat in her chambers, paperwork spread across her desk. A knock at the door. Come in. A young black girl entered, maybe 16, nervous, clutching a folder. You don't know me, the girl said, but I saw what happened and I wanted to say thank you. I didn't think people like us could ever wear that robe. Keisha smiled gently and stood. You don't have to wait to believe it, she said. Start now. She gestured to the empty chair beside her desk. Tell me what's in that folder. The girl stepped forward, eyes brighter.